Tenet, Hollywood versus reality.
That part is a little dramatic.
Coming up. Hey 7-4 crew, welcome back. If you don't know me, my name's Kelsey. I'm a 747 pilot. My channel, 7-4 Gear, is all about aviation. Warner Brothers, or whoever did the promotion for this movie, obviously did a lot of promotion like they would for any movie, but I didn't actually hear about it until I saw a clip of a 747 crashing into a hangar. And then I found out that they bought an actual 747 to crash it into the hangar. Now I don't know what's cheaper, buying a 747 to crash it, or hiring a 747 pilot to talk about what's real, but we're gonna see in this movie how good of a job they did. Let's get into it.
You want to crash a plane?
But not from the air. Not so dramatic. I would have run a jet off the taxiway, breach the rear wall, and start a fire.
Well, how big a plane?
That part is a little dramatic. This is me here. This team will work the plane.
There can't be passengers.
Norsk freight. They use the hangar on the west side of the Freeport.
You want to crash a transport plane? What about the crew?
Whoa, pop the slides, chuck them off.
On the move.
What's the problem? They'll be fine.
I want to pause this here real quick, just a few quick things. They're calling it a transport plane.
You want to crash a transport plane? What about the crew?
There is something called a transport category aircraft, which also is technically correct, but I think what they're meaning to call it is a cargo plane, but they're calling it a transport plane. The other thing they're talking about is chucking the crew out the side. Now, there are slides, but those slides, obviously, if a plane is moving forward, those slides are going to run you straight into an engine. And it's a really long drop. The ones that have the slides are on the upper deck. So if you pop those slides, you got to go down 2 decks. In training, we actually do training to go down that slide. It's fun, but it's pretty high. I've talked to guys who have done it in real life because they've had a problem or one reason or another, and they said it was pretty scary to do it in real life, but it's better than the alternative, which is to grab these special cables and go out the top. They showed some videos of that that did not look fun at all. And if you don't recognize this guy, he is the son of this guy. So we're going to find out if they take this plane inverted or not. Let's see what's next.
Is everybody on this plane vegetarian? Because all I got here is vegetarian. So that looks like meat, but I think that looks vegetarian. I think they both look vegetarian. I'm a really old piece, you know? Okay.
Wow, so if you were to take basically a whole scene and cut together a bunch of things that were all completely Hollywood, that would be this scene here. This is what's called a converted freighter. So when they make the 747, they can make it where it is an original freighter or a straight freighter, and then they have some that are passenger planes that after their usefulness for a regular airline, an airline that flies a lot of cargo will buy them and convert them and make them a converted freighter. So there is some differences. So the fact that they have a converted freighter, that is a real thing, but let's talk about what's wrong here. The ladder does not go to the upper deck that way. It's facing this door here, which is called the L1 door. It's called the L1 door because it's the first one on the left. L, left side, 1. That's actually where all of our food and everything comes in the plane. That's what it comes through, that door right there, and you usually walk in that door and go straight up the steps. As you can see, it is closed, which is not how it would be because that door doesn't close until we're ready to actually push back and go to work. The reason that it's not closed until we're ready to go is because there's a set of stairs there from outside. There's a set of stairs, and that's our primary evacuation point. If there's a problem, we go out that way instead of going down the slide or anything like that. It's the quickest way to get off the plane safely. Next, on a converted freighter, this door they're walking through either doesn't exist or it's never used. I can't speak of every converted freighter everywhere, but it's not a door that you'll ever see used on a freighter. The only plane that I've ever seen that's a 747 that uses that door on the right side is the LCF. If you aren't familiar with that, I fly this special modified plane. It's called the Dreamlifter. It's a modified 747. LCF stands for Large Cargo Freighter. And that plane does have a right door that we use to come in and out. But that's the only 747 I've ever seen that uses that. This little chunkster right here is the Dreamlifter. I used to fly it all the time. That was my primary aircraft for over a year, and now I don't fly it as much, but she does have a right-hand side door, so that door can exist. Next up here is the galley. This galley does not go on the main deck here as you see it. The reason for having a 747 freighter is that you can transport a lot of freight. That deck that you see them on right now, that's called the main deck, and that's where all the cargo goes. And that's how you make money flying a 747 cargo plane, by moving cargo. So you wouldn't put a galley right there in the middle that would eat up a bunch of space right there on the main deck. There are some other reasons as well that you wouldn't put it there, not just for that, but you also have, there's no oxygen there. So if you have a depressurization, you're gonna have to depressurize that main deck. There's no oxygen down there. So if you went down there to get a meal, there was a problem, you depressurize the main deck. Now you're down there without any oxygen. That's a big problem. Also, there's no seats. And those seats on the plane aren't sitting sideways, but there are no seats on the plane, again, on that main deck, because that space is used to move cargo. And then you hear him asking these guys about their food preferences.
Looks like meat, but I think that looks vegetarian.
The people who handle the food will come up that other door, that L1 door that I was talking about. The stairs, we come up the stairs, we bring all of our stuff down there, the food comes up there, everything goes in and out of that door there. But the people who are doing the catering, they will bring up that food. If there's something weird or different or unique, they'll talk to the pilots about it. A lot of cases, the first officer will be there, and if they think there's something weird, they'll run it past the captain. And there are some times where there are additional people that are on the plane. Like you see these people that are walking around, they wouldn't be walking around that main deck there. But there are sometimes special handlers that are with us on a transport, but they aren't going to be the ones in charge of deciding what food or how much food or all that stuff that needs to be on the plane. The crew is going to decide that. So if they got asked a question, those people are typically used to moving around on these aircraft. They would say, ask the pilots. They wouldn't come over and start picking their meals out, because that's not how it works. So you know how it works. There's kind of a weird pecking order on the freighters. This is typically how it breaks down. If you have the pilots up there, the first meal, the first choice will go to the pilot who's flying, regardless of seniority. Then the next one will go to the captain, and then it will go on seniority from there. So let's say you have 4 pilots, and the junior pilot, the newest pilot, is the one that's flying. He gets the first pick, then the captain, and then the next 2 FOs based off seniority. That's kind of how it breaks down. Thought I'd give you a little insight of how the meal selection goes. There is always a special captain's meal, and sometimes it's a little bit fancier, but usually, in my experience, most captains go like, I don't really care. They just let whoever's flying pick, and then they go and they pick the meal that they want. On the main deck here, there's no space really where you see these seats. It's very tight. You have a couple of inches maybe to be able to squeeze by if the freight that you're moving is very small. But again, you make money with where those seats are, so you wouldn't have that there, and you also don't have any oxygen there. So there'd be no way for them to breathe if there was a problem. There's no oxygen down there for them. And in some cases, we're not transporting a lot, so you can see the amount of freight that they have, the amount of cargo isn't a lot. So it's possible that you don't have a lot back there. I have moved where there's not a lot, but take a look here. This freight that they're transporting isn't even properly secured. There's a bunch of hooks and things that are set up to secure that freight so it doesn't shift in flight. And then the final thing that I noticed is, look how the guy closes the door here. When you close the door, it actually looks like this. This is what a closed door looks like. And I'm guessing that he has some friends down there on the ground to drive the truck away that they just rode up on. I'm not really sure. But you can't just leave a truck sitting there next to the plane and then have the crew say, hey, we're ready for pushback. They'll say, you have a truck sitting next to the plane. So I'm not sure who pulled that truck away, but let's just imagine that it happened. Had they done this in real life, it would have made more sense for these guys to go up onto the flight deck with the food, and then they could take a look around. See how many pilots up there, see how many people are up there. They could have got a better layout and then talk with the pilots, because the galley in real life is right next to and right behind the pilots. Here's a picture of me from my Instagram. You can see right behind me here, that's the galley. That little light that you see right there is the oven. I was making some food because when I'm bored, I eat all the time. So besides the fact that there is something called a converted freighter, pretty much everything else from here is Hollywood.
The radio. Go.
cargo area where the cargo planes are usually nowhere near where the passenger planes are. Yet they have these little bag carts that are just running around behind the plane, even though this plane is getting ready to push back, which is not how that would happen in real life at all. I know some of you are going to say, ha, there's no door in the cockpit. That's not real. But that actually is accurate. There's usually no door on a 747 freighter that blocks the cockpit from the back of the upper deck. Now again, I can't say that for every 747 freighter, whether it's converted or original, but they typically don't have that. There is a locked door before the flight deck, but it's not to the flight deck like you see when we do a passenger flight. When we do a passenger flight, it's a locked door right there where he's standing in the doorway. There's a door right there. And it's built obviously to have a door right there. But when you're doing a freighter, there is no door right there. Something interesting though is that there are 2 captains up there, which does happen from time to time. So I'll give it a pass because that can happen in real life. You can tell they're captains because they have 4 stripes on their shoulders. Next I thought, why does he have this book out? I've talked about this book before. It's called a QRH. It's basically the book that we have out when we have a bunch of problems or we're trying to resolve an issue. Everything has a step-by-step thing that we do. If there's this problem, do these 10 steps, because they don't want the pilot just up there flipping switches and doing all kinds of crazy things. So they give you an exact explanation. Do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we do a lot of training to get into that book, find the right problem, find the solution for it, go through the steps. It gives you everything step by step, exactly what should happen. The engineers that know this plane backwards and forwards have designed everything. And then if there ever is a real life emergency that happens and something wasn't in there, they later add it in there. I think I talked about that specific thing in a radio interview that I did a couple years back in San Diego, but it's just they don't want the pilots to start doing things because we can make it worse by trying to interpret things in a real life scenario where there's a high stress. They want to tell us exactly what to do so that we can resolve the problem quickly. You may have noticed all these fuel control switches are red, and that typically means that there's a fire or there's some major malfunction. So these 2 captains up there are just cool as a cucumber with that book out to handle the fact that there's a fire on these 4 engines and their plane is still getting pushed back and taxied and moved along. No big deal. There's a fire on all of them because obviously those lights are all lit up, and he's got that book out to handle the fire. Is the only thing that I can interpret based off of what I've seen so far. Now this is not a rule, but typically if you have your engines running, there's no reason to be getting pulled forward when you have 4 running engines there. So if you're going to push back, obviously you need it to go backwards, but if you've started all your engines, which it sounds like they have, you have no reason to be getting pulled forward. That makes no sense. Now it's possible, I guess, because they have 4 engines on fire, they thought, hey, we'll just let the tug pull you forward, so maybe that's why they have the tug out there. I'm not an explosive expert, but this is definitely not the best way to get this gold off the plane. The taxiway is full of other planes, people driving around over there, and people walking around planes, and you're pushing all this stuff after the explosion, all this gold bars out the back of the plane. Why would you do that? There is a massive door on the side of a 747. So that is how all the cargo comes in and gets offloaded from our plane. So if you wanted to get all this gold off, the easiest thing to do would be open that door and put a dumpster truck or some type of truck next to there and just push all the gold into it. That would be a lot easier if you're trying to steal all the gold. I'm not trying to give you guys any ideas, but I'm just saying that would make a lot more sense than blowing the plane up and then possibly severing all the hydraulic lines and all the other things that are back there and then pushing all the gold onto the taxiway, which is going to draw a ton of attention. You could just open that door, which would be quiet. It would look weird, but makes more sense, and then put a dump truck or something over there and push all the gold into that and then just drive the dump truck off the airport. And of course, you can send 10% of all proceeds to 7-4 Gear. Where did that magic slide come from? There's not a slide there on this door. That's the L1 door that I talked about earlier. There is no slide that comes off that door. The slide is actually on the upper deck. It's kind of a pain to get it to work because you got to open a door and kick this thing over and do some stuff. That door with that slide, as you saw when they opened the door, the slide didn't come out. In real life, if you were to open that door and that thing was armed, as soon as you open that door, that slide would come shooting out. I've seen it happen in real life as an accident on a passenger plane. I was doing a walk around and the passenger plane next to me accidentally forgot to disarm the door. They opened it and a slide shot out. It was pretty crazy, but as soon as you open that door, if it's armed, it shoots out. Then the magical slide went away, which is true because a lot of times slides can double as a raft, so that's a possibility to cut the slide away. But if you were to cut the slide away and where it's at, if you were to rip the slide away, it would just get sucked up into one of the engines over there because they're sucking in all kinds of air, and this thing is obviously filled with air, so it would get sucked in and probably blow up or suck up and mess up one of the engines, which I also didn't see. Next, you see him add power to engines 3 or 4. Yet, you see no changes in the actual display, which we use in real life to see what the engines are doing. There's no change in there. You see right here, this shows what the engines are doing, and as he pushes it up, there's no change in that screen right there. And then I'm guessing that he used this instead of using the tiller, which would be right next to him, to steer the plane. I'm guessing he used this power instead because they knew that they had lost the hydraulic pressure from blowing up the thing in the back, which is really incredible systems knowledge that you know about that. But it would be easier in real life to just use the tiller and not have to run up the power on one side. It turns a lot easier that way. Something they did get right, and I've seen every Hollywood movie get this right, is this door does exist. It seems strange, like that thing's a real thing, but it is. In real life, that door does exist. It's in Executive Decision. It's obviously in this movie. It exists in real life. I've seen it used in real life. We had a problem once where the mechanic actually went down through that door to check on something outside. I've never climbed up from the ground through it, but I've climbed down into the compartment between the two where we have all kinds of electronics and stuff. I've climbed down in there. I think I posted some videos or something on Instagram once. We had this 4-hour thing that we were on the ground with nothing to do, and of course after 4 hours, you know, I'm like a small child and I'm going to get myself into trouble. So I did climb down in there, but that room does exist and that door is a real thing. When I saw the camera start zooming in on their face towards the end, I was honestly expecting them to do something or say something like, "So cool." I don't know why, I was just expecting something like that. Now, something that I didn't cover in the Castaway movie that I want to address here because a lot of people were upset about it in the Castaway because I didn't talk about it is, for an engine to work, it needs fuel and it needs an input, something to tell it to start adding more fuel and to accelerate. That's how it works. So take a look at this scene here. So that is totally not possible in any possible way because no one's adding fuel, so how is it accelerating? If you want to see the Castaway Hollywood versus reality that I did, check out this video here. And if you want to see another movie by this same director, check out this video up here. I look forward to hearing from you. Until then, keep the blue side up.